Okay, let's give it a 3, 2, 1. Go ahead.
Hi, Katie. It's so good to spend some time with you. I'm so thankful that I had time to visit your classroom last week, visit you with your fourth graders, and really see virtual learning underway with a rigorous instruction that was happening for our kids. So first, thank you for that. And secondly, I know we had an interesting conversation that I thought might be worth capturing for some other folks, for our teachers, for our school leaders, as we're thinking about making this transition back to in-person learning for students and families that are interested, but then also thinking about the families that may not be able to send their students back and are continuing on a virtual platform. And just thought it would be interesting, knowing you haven't done that yet, to really unpack your thinking and talk through that together. So thanks for agreeing to talk with us today. Can you just tell us a little bit about the virtual learning that has been taking place so far, lessons learned, your successes, your struggles, and really thinking about that from two angles, one for your students and one for you as a teacher?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. So, virtual learning really stressed me out in the beginning. It still does sometimes on many days. But those of you who know me know I'm a control freak. So this was the unknown, didn't know what was going on. Biggest challenge by far is the missing the connections with my students, missing being in that space with them, experiencing the joy of learning together and just being with them, getting to know them. So with that, also biggest struggle for me is still assessment and feedback. So getting to know what my students' strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and giving them real-time feedback to support them in their growth. Because sometimes we can't see that online. We can't see exactly what they're doing and what they know. And that's been really hard for me. In the classroom, I always give the example of just being able to, you walk around the classroom, you see something happening in the moment, you can just pull them to the back table and say, let's work on this. You can, at the end of class, say, you can like whisper to them and say, you might need some help with this. We can work on this tomorrow. You can encourage them. All those things of getting to know the students, what they're good at, what they need support in, and being able to give that to them in real time has been a real challenge for me. And I would just say overall meeting the needs of all my learners. I'm just really believe that all students are capable of doing great things. And sometimes I feel like I'm not virtually being able to meet that all. Some of my students who are not coming every day, some of my students who are coming but not turning in assignments. I just have been feeling throughout all of this that it's not enough. And when I talk to my colleagues, we often talk about how we're working maybe 5 times as hard for a result that's not what we are used to. And that's been really frustrating for me, who is a person who expects a lot from my students and from myself, really. So that has been, I would say, my biggest challenge, feedback, assessment, and meeting the needs of all of my students. I would say that some things that have helped with that was the shift to the Wellness Wednesday in small groups. So on those days, I'm able to meet with students, and just in that small group, I'm seeing more students turn their cameras on. I'm being able to just have students share their screen and look at their work and give them that real-time feedback. And so that's not happening in front of the whole class. And I can have these conversations with them where I'm getting to know them a little bit better, getting to know their work a little bit better, and give them more authentic feedback that I think is supporting them when we're in the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday days as well. I also think something that helps is having Google Classroom. I was nervous about it at first. I had never used it, but I really like the platform of being able to just go into students' assignments as they're working and being able to maybe real time put a sentence starter in there, give a comment about something that they might need to be working on, and so that they have that support real time. And we can work on assignments simultaneously, which is actually something we were not able to do before. So I appreciate that. I've definitely learned a lot about platforms for engagement. We use Jamboard every single day in my class. We use Padlet a lot. We use breakout rooms all the time. So I've been learning, as all of us have, about how to just make things a little bit more engaging than they are when you're just doing a regular Zoom without all those things. So I've learned a lot about technology, but the biggest thing I've learned about technology is that technology cannot replace real-time teaching in person, and technology cannot replace us as teachers. So that is good to know. And I do look forward to going back to see my students and teaching in person, because I really do miss those connections and relationships. I would
let me
say,
ask you one quick question in the middle there, because I think you hit on a point, but I think is really important to elevate. You named a number of tools, Jamboard, all the different resources that you use. What did you learn about implementing them as a teacher, right? Because that's a lot of newness to you. You said it's not easy. How did you make it easy so that now your students know how to use those tools? You use them in a seamless way in your instructional routine. So talk to us just a little bit about that.
Yeah, so will be pretty honest, with the first time I used Jamboard, it was a complete disaster. And I had kids like on the wrong slide, kids writing things that not necessarily had anything to do with what we were learning. And it was a lot of me like being I'm very proactive, and I was in the moment very reactive, like everyone stop, like trying to frantically close the Jamboard so that they didn't have access, and kind of freaking out about it a little bit. But after the lesson, I told my co-teacher, I'm like, I'm never using Jamboard again. But I also think if we say things like that and we limit things to one experience, then students never have the opportunity to show what they can do with it. So, the next day I just said, I want to use Jamboard with you. I think this is a great, engaging, interactive tool that you really do like, but we just have to set some guidelines and some expectations. And part of it was me just learning how to use the platform. Like I wasn't that familiar with it. So I needed to familiarize myself with it. I had to reach out to other educators who have used it successfully, do some research. And then we just came up with some norms and procedures for it. And now every time we use Jamboard, even every day, I just real quick before we do it, what are the reminders? You stay on your own slide. You stay on topic, you support each other. If someone can't access a Jamboard, you can put in you can put up their sticky note for them. So we have all these norms that we talk about it as a class before we do it. And then it just took time. It's, I always say things are messy at first. Virtual learning is messy at first, but if you take time and you let the students grapple with it, you grapple with it, they can really do great things with it. So Jamboard was one of the things that I find that I have the most success with it, but it took time, and it took kind of a mindset shift and saying, virtual learning is not going to be engaging if you don't use tools like this. So you have to learn how to use them, and you have to reflect and adjust.
And I love, Katie, when we talked last time, that you also talked about pacing that for yourself, that you didn't try to do 6 things at one time, but really tried to learn one, get good at it, set the expectations, allow kids time to make sense of it and engage with it before you tried to add on the next thing.
Yeah. So when the district came out with PD in the fall, before all this started, there was PDs on everything. There was Jamboard, there was Padlet, Nearpod, Pear Deck, like all these things. And I was just feeling like I was overwhelmed. And so I was thinking, if I'm trying to do this with all my students, they're going to feel overwhelmed too. I also have a daughter in 4th grade, and I was seeing her try to navigate some of these platforms and the frustration she was seeing. And it was really important to me to start really simple. So just one, like Jamboard. I started with Padlet, actually. So I started with Padlet, used it for a few weeks before I introduced something new. And I think that's important for students too, because they're already overwhelmed by virtual learning. It was overwhelming to them in the beginning. They didn't know what to expect. They still get stressed out. They still don't feel like it's not normal. So they worry about their work, and they want to make sure it's the best it can be. So I just think a platform overload can really stress students out, and we have to be very careful about how we use them and when we use them to not overwhelm them further.
Great. Can we shift a little bit now, Katie, and think about that moment when you do get back into the classroom with some of your students? What is that going to look like in your school, in your classroom? What modality of teaching? What are you nervous about? What are you excited about within that structure?
So first of all, I am the one thing that I do tell people is that I am excited that we have a solid curriculum. So I don't feel like when we make this shift, I'm going to be having to reinvent everything. I have I have the way I've been teaching every day since the beginning of the year with the curriculum, with the text, with the instructional routines. I just have to figure out how to make them come alive in the classroom as well as for my virtual students as well. And again, I'm a type A personality. So every night I'm thinking about, one of my colleagues always says that I go into the weeds quickly, and I do. Like, I'm always thinking about the logistics, but really this shift is all logistics, right? Where the logistics of keeping our students apart, the logistics of making sure they're wearing their masks, the logistics of setting up the technology. So one of the things I've been thinking about the most is setting up the technology. Like, are my students going to be projected on the Promethean board for the in-person students to see? Like, I'm thinking about things like this. But what I really have to tell myself is the lesson I learned in the beginning from the virtual is that I might try something one day and it's not going to work. I have to go in there and I have to try it. I have to see what works for my students, what works best for me. And it's going to take adjusting. It's not going to be perfect on day one. It's probably not going to be perfect on week 3. And I'm going to have to see what is working for me and my students, get feedback from my students, and change things around. In terms of how I'm teaching, we're going to be doing concurrent teaching. So teaching the in-person students at the same time as the virtual students. And that does stress me out, to be honest. I feel like I'm being kind of stretched thin. I do worry about being able to meet the needs of my virtual learners, because I feel like I've done okay with them and I don't want to take any more away from their experience. But honestly, like, I've thought a lot about it. What I've been doing is, there's a lot of schools that are open in the country. So I've been connecting with other educators where this is working. And I just think about how I'm basically going to replicate what I'm doing here virtually within my own classroom and then add some engagement pieces. So when I'm planning, I'm thinking about how if we think about like whole group or like explicit instruction, and then the shift to students working independently, my lesson when I'm speaking, when I'm providing the explicit instruction, will still be over Zoom and my students in my classroom will see that. But then when we shift to the independent work, I have to think about, okay, so if my students in person, I want them to get away from the screen for a bit. So I'm trying to think about what kind of things I can do for them independently. Can they do some stop and jots in their notebook? Can they use chart paper to do a chalk talk, right? And then my students virtually, that's when they can be working on the Padlet or they can be working on a Jamboard. But we're just going to have to, the independent work is where I'm trying to, I guess, figure it out, because that's where I need my in-person kids to take a break from the screen. And I need to be able to see what the in-person kids are doing. And I want to also make sure that I'm keeping track of my virtual kids as well. So I'm a little bit nervous about that. But again, it's really going to take some trying and planning, and networking with other educators to talk about what's working and what's not, and what are some things that we can do to make this the best that it can be. One of the biggest, sorry.
I was just going to say, Katie, before you jump there, it sounds like you're able to take some of the learning that you've had in the virtual in space, right? To think about how that application can continue into hybrid space. And those tools that I continue to hear you talk about and the routines that your students are using. I also think it's really interesting that you brought curriculum up, because that is a driving piece as well. Knowing that, Wit and Wisdom and Eureka both have the Learn Anywhere plan that was really designed to be anywhere, meaning virtual, hybrid, and thinking about that being the structure that you can build from. And then also now really thinking about what's different, right? So how do you navigate between those on the screen and those in person, but ensuring that you get to all of them with an equity lens for both time and instruction, but also what you said earlier about how do you hold yourself accountable for meeting their needs. So I think that's just really important to pin. Go ahead, you were going to add something else.
Yeah, so going to the curriculum, just thinking about, I am thankful for that, because I'm not having to go in and think about all the instructional routines, think about the technology, and think about what I'm going to teach. That's going to be a seamless transition. The content to me is going to be a seamless transition. We're in the module about the Revolutionary War. I know I'm still going to be teaching about the Revolutionary War. That's what the content my students are learning. We have the what, and it's just going to be thinking about the how, which is a lot of logistics, and it is not easy. But one of the things that's really important to me is mindset. And I have a 4th grade daughter, and I want her to have as joyful as an experience in school as possible, whether that's virtual, whether that's in person. And I know it's really hard. Teachers right now are doing I think this is my hardest year of teaching ever. But if we go in with the mindset that this isn't going to work, then I feel like we're doing a disservice to our students. And we have to try, and we have to greet them every day, and we have to be excited to see them, and we have to bring joy to them in whatever way we can. So again, it's learning. It's going in knowing that this is not going to work, which is very hard for me. If you know me, it's very hard for me to say this probably isn't going to work day one. But if we have that mindset, and then we have to network, we have to know our people, we have to make connections and say, look, I tried this. One of the things that my team talked about the other day was it seems simple, but we talked about how teachers are going to be moving to classrooms, but students are not going to be moving. So we talked about how it would be really helpful to have a standing desk on wheels. So we have all our technology on the standing desk, and then when we switch, we roll it down the hallway. And it seems like a small thing, but just talking to people about that made me feel so much better because I was thinking again in the weeds about, okay, so when I go next door, I'm going to have to reconnect my computer. I'm going to have to reconnect my doc cam. I'm going to have to reconnect my projector. That's going to take time away from my students. And so just talking with other teachers at my school and talking to friends again across the country where it is working, we're getting these ideas of how it can work. And so I have to think like that. And I think we as teachers have to think like that. So if engagement is a problem, if technology is a problem, if platforms are problems, what can we do together to make it as successful as possible for our students? Because at the end of the day, that is what they deserve, the best education that we can give them.
I love that, Katie. I love that our teachers' tenacity and depth of work and commitment is it's blowing us away in what we're seeing across the district. And I think you're absolutely right. It's the mindset of knowing that they're trying to reach every single student and, taking every roadblock that's been in the way, whether it's been the first shutdown, whether it's been virtual and now into hybrid. We talked about this early in the year, instead of using that as a roadblock, using it as a stepping stone to get to the next piece. So just thankful for teachers like you, every single teacher we have in the district who is embracing this and really unpacking. I'm going to throw a curveball question just because, I like to do that. That's why we have good conversations together, but we're getting lots of questions about pacing.
Yeah.
And it's hard. I think you said it earlier. We definitely don't want to go over to anyone and say, it's day 6 and you're on day 5 and I'm writing you up, right? Or you're 7 minutes off of where you should be after the launch, or those kinds of pieces. But I also think it's really important to set expectations for pacing, and would just like to hear what you have to say about that, and what you think about pacing in regards to expectations for your students.
Yeah. So again, this is to me where it's really important to have the curriculum and to have the Learn Anywhere plan. I think we had a conversation in our ELA team meeting yesterday just about how, some teachers are feeling that. Like, teachers are feeling like, I'm behind, I'm not doing enough. And I think that's an overall feeling teachers across the country right now. Like, they feel like they're not doing enough for their students. And there was a real feeling yesterday in the meeting. We were inputting scores into a firm, and we were inputting end of module 2 scores. And some teachers are feeling like, I'm not even at the end of module 2. And then they're feeling like they're not doing enough. And right now is not the time for teachers to not feel like they're not doing enough, because they're doing so much. So I think it's really important. And we had the conversation about just looking at those arcs. And so I can speak from the literacy lens on this question. But looking at the end of module task, what do students need to know and do? What skills and knowledge do they need to know or have for this end of module task, and how can I get them there? Whether it's not taking out a whole arc, but just going through the arcs and seeing what are the key pieces of knowledge and skills that students need, and combining some of those lessons. But again, and those Learn Anywhere plans, those are much shortened versions of the curriculum. So I think those really can be used strategically to build those key knowledge and skills. And again, I don't think we should be taking a ton of things out. It is about, again, conversation. So meeting with your teams and saying, okay, what do the students need? What do I need to do as a teacher to get them there? And what can I not necessarily take out, but what can I modify in today's lesson to make it a little bit quicker, and thinking about those core pieces of knowledge.
I love that, Katie, and especially talking about the knowledge being the driver of that, right? It's one of the reasons we adopted the curriculum we did, because of that cyclical approach year over year, but across grade levels too. So definitely thoughtful pacing decisions, and then just support around that, right? So you hit the team aspect. How do principals have conversations with their teachers about this, so that, you know, pacing again should not be anybody holding a checklist saying day to day, but what it should be is making sure that we're giving students what they need and deserve, so that as we're going through this, it's not okay to still be in module 1, right? It's okay that you might be 5 lessons ahead of your next door neighbor, but at the same time, how are you making up that cadence so we can get to the coverage of where students are? Thanks for shifting to the left with me there for a minute.
No problem.
Let's go back into hybrid instruction then. What are you most excited for? You know, you talked about your planning, you talked about the tech pieces of it. What do you feel, what are you most excited for? What have you talked to families about? What excites them, or even your students?
I mean, I'm just excited to see their faces in real life. I keep saying, and I always tell my students in real life, and they say, I'm supposed to say IRL. But I'm just to see them, and I know they're going to be behind masks, and I know that I'm going to be behind a mask, but I keep saying we're still capable of joy from behind a mask. The mask doesn't mask our feelings. It just masks the germs, right? So I'm just excited to see their faces and to see them in action in person, see what they're capable of, see their work, have those connections with them, have conversations that aren't from behind a screen. The screen to me that is going to be on their desk, and I know a lot of teachers are worried about this, of it just being kind of like the learning center model where the computer is in front of them and the teacher is more like the moderator. But I'm trying to view the screen as the projector, right? So I usually have a projector in my class in person. So when I'm projecting something important, that's coming across on the screen. But conversations in the classroom between kids, I still want to happen in real life. That's where the magic of learning happens, through those conversations, the students doing their work together. And I'm just really excited to build onto my class community. I think I've done a pretty good job virtually of building class community, but it can only get better by meeting them in person, having those conversations with them in person, getting to know them even better. I do feel like I don't know them as well as I have known students in the past. And I feel like I'm just going to get to know them even better when they come into school. And also, to be quite honest, I'm excited because I feel like you said, hybrid is the scaffold, right? All of us want to go back to normal. And I feel like this, to me, is exciting because it means that soon we can go back to a normal classroom environment where we all want to be. And I feel like if we don't do this step, then we're not going to get there. And we have to do this step. And again, it's going to be messy. We're going to have to learn from it. There's going to be days that I cry. There's going to be days that I want to say, this is horrible. Maybe I should just go back to virtual. But we're teachers, we're resilient, we're going to bounce back for our kids. That's what we do. And again, I think to sum up, I guess, 2 things. I'm excited to see my students, their faces. Like it makes me cry thinking about it because I just have missed that part so much. And I'm excited that this means that there's a beginning to the end, I guess, and that we'll see the light at the end of the tunnel and see our students and more of those students as soon as possible.
That's really helpful. Have you heard anything from families, Katie, yet about this, about the, what they hope for coming back? Is it similar, or anything additional to add there?
Yeah, I mean, families have the same concerns as a lot of the teachers do. Like, families are concerned that the ones who are opting to stay virtual for it, that's their choice for reasons that are personal, and that they've made that choice for their family. They're worried about the virtual instruction not being as high quality because teachers are now kind of torn between the two. Parents are concerned that when their students go into school, like, they don't know exactly what it's going to look like. Again, this is new. They haven't seen it before. So I think the virtual open houses that we're doing are going to be helpful with that, just having them be able to see the classrooms and what they look like. Parents are concerned about safety. Parents are concerned about just making sure that their kids are getting what they need, health-wise, emotional-wise, and education-wise. And I think overall, though, the parents who are opting to send their kids in are just excited to get their kids back in the classroom so that they can see their peers, they can interact with their teachers. And I would say that most of my feedback from parents has just been that they're excited for their students learning to continue to grow in this process. And I'm just very open with my parents. Like, again, I say the same thing to them that I'd say to you, that this isn't going to be perfect in the beginning, but I'm also going to need your feedback. So from the parents at home, what are you seeing virtually that has changed? And what do you think we can do about this? And I also have the most supportive parents in the world who, last night at our PTO meeting, we were talking about one of their concerns was, are the virtual students going to be able to hear the teacher from behind a mask while I'm on Zoom? So they were talking about, okay, what can we do to support you? Do teachers need to be mic'd in any way? And again, I don't know if we're going to need all that stuff, but parents are asking these questions. And again, I just told them, I don't know, and just try to be patient with me because I'm going to figure out what I need. Probably by week 1, I might need one thing. Week 2, I might need something else. But I'm so thankful for their support in this process. And I think overall, there's a feeling of anxiety, but there's more of a feeling of excitement again, that we are going to be able to do this. And I really do believe that we're going to be able to do this well.
I love that. I love the idea of the excitement and the outreach. Parents have been asking that. I've seen a couple of teachers on Facebook who have put Amazon lists out there, and they're filled up in like 32 seconds of folks just wanting to support us as a community, which is so powerful and really leads from the passion of all of our teachers and our leaders. I'm going to ask you one last question, Katie, and this one's going to be a hard one just because I think you probably said it maybe 4 or 5 times that you might be just a tad bit type A.
Yeah.
What's the one piece of advice you give yourself for this first 2 weeks in this hybrid kind of situation?
Well, the Post-it note on my computer and what I tell my students every day and what I tell myself every day is, you've got this. Everyone who knows me knows that I say that like 100 times a day. So you get in funks, you get low. Like yesterday when we were trying to enter our scores into a firm and a firm wasn't working and we were thinking that we were behind pace, and I was in the team meeting, like, you just get like a funk and you think those things. You think, this, I'm not doing enough. This isn't working. Like, mental health for teachers has been a real struggle this year as well. But we are, as a profession, the most creative, hardworking, dedicated profession, I think, that there is. And we truly, really care about our students. And I think that's what's going to drive us to make this work. So I would just say to anyone who's, doubting themselves, because I think there is a lot of self-doubt in this. Like, how am I going to do this for my students? I think for the students too, they're doubting, am I going to be able to do this in person? They don't know what it's going to look like either. So I think that advice would just be, you've got this. We've got this together, and we can network and reach out to each other for support.
Katie, I so value your time and your commitment to this work. I think that just having the opportunity, I would love to have the time to step into every classroom with every teacher and have this conversation. But I think you allowing us the time to do it together just to elevate the realness of, the many things you identified, right? The depth of work that it's going to take, the newness of it, the flexibility to give yourself grace. And I loved the piece too about the networking, right? So don't be surprised when I come back to say, like, can you hold a 4th grade PLC that we just have for teachers to come together and support through this, think through those things. But the other thing is the high expectations that we know our teachers have for themselves, for our students, this idea about curriculum, where does it sit? How does it work? And all of those pieces. So I just want to thank you for opening up your brain to us and sharing your thinking and your planning. And really just am grateful for that time and space with you today. So thank you for that.
No problem. And maybe some other teachers we can do, like, after 3 weeks, let's reflect on how it's going and what we can do next to make it even better.
I love it. We will definitely figure out how to do that, and maybe even do, some little teacher support groups in that within grade bands. It's a great idea and something that would be a great support to everyone. So again, thank you. Best of luck. Anything that we can do to support you, please reach out.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Stacey, did we miss anything that you
No,
think
I
we
think
should hit?
Nope, I think that was awesome. I think that was really good. The only thing I think we need to do is a quick intro, and I can just edit this onto the front. So, Janice, if you want to just do like a welcome everybody and introduce yourself, and then introduce Katie, and then Katie, if you just give us your full name and where you teach, what grade level, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Great. All right. So, but you think we covered topics well. Katie, you are a rock star. That was great.
Yep. Let me just, I'm going to unpin Katie so that.
Again. Okay.
Do you hear that saw though? I'm really sorry.
No, that's okay. It was hardly even noticeable.
Okay.
I only probably even recognized what it was because you said it at the beginning,
Okay.
so no
All right.
worries. And I don't know if you saw somebody came into the room and I was like shooing them away with my hand. So
Yeah.
these things
Kylan was out
happen.
shoveling snow and he's texted me like 30 times, I'm stopping for soup. Do you want any? I'm like, I can't look at that right now. All right. Tell me when you're ready.
All right, go ahead, Janice.
Hi, everybody. I'm Janice Lane, the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning. We are all so excited to be part of a conversation today. I know we're all in the throes of planning for hybrid instruction. Had an opportunity to talk with one of our teachers after a classroom observation. And so asked Katie Scotti if she would just open up her thinking, have an open discussion with us around this planning. So Katie, I'll let you do a quick intro to the team.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Scotti. I am the 4th grade ELA and social studies teacher at Thomas Johnson Elementary Middle.
Perfect. Awesome.
Okay. I stuttered a little, but I guess it'll work. You'll make me sound okay. All right. I think it was real, which I think is what we wanted, was just the outside thinking. And Katie, you are such a deep thinker. You covered much more than I ever intended in the questions in getting to, and I think it was all real, right? Like talking about the curriculum, it wasn't an add-on. It is something that you really think about and, you know, every angle. So our goal will be to kind of clean up, and Stacy and her team will make this into a cute little chat kind of thing. We're meeting with principals every Tuesday and Thursday.
Okay.
And so I would like to try to see, I know Stacy might twinge a little. I'd like to try and see if we can get this ready for Tuesday afternoon to share with principals, just to say principals have been killing us, asking us for videos. And as I shared, Stacy's team's building out some. Of some actual teach, but I think this would be really beneficial. So I just, again, thank you for your time.
No problem.
You rock. All right.
Thank you both so much.
We'll make sure